Well, good afternoon, Coronado Rotary, and welcome to another fun-packed Rotary meeting. We are going to hear from Carrie Ludline for the Invocation Pledge.
These wise words come from a young woman, Annalise Marie Frank, age 13. Everyone has inside them a piece of good news. The good news is that you don't know how great you can be, how much you can love, what you can accomplish, and what your potential is. So be thankful for this day, for its blessings, for its opportunities, and for its challenges. May we be challenged to give our best always. Pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Karen. Visiting Rotarians and guests, past President Dan Orr, come on up.
What's this thing on here, Bob?
Well, we have some of our Rotarians are actually using some really sophisticated technology to hear.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it's only light for me, huh? All right. We have a visiting Rotarian. One of them is somebody that found us. Casino. Stop me if you've heard this before. From Las Vegas, Nevada, please welcome Gary Boss. Now, guests of Rotarians, starting on my left, your right.
I have guests. It's my husband, Taylor Stockdale. I have a guest. It's my husband, Taylor Stockdale.
Jim Leno, Coronado. Is that it? All right. I had fun all last week. Thanks, Bob.
I enjoyed it. Thank you, Past President Dan. All right, Red Badgers, and I bet you that there's more than what I have here, so, but I think we have Jerry Brown. All right. Gary's our pride. We're going to get you unred badged here this month. Okay. Suzanne Frantz. Arlene Lynn. Oh, there. Where's Arlene? Okay. Brandon Mather. Is it Mather or Mather? Mather. Mather. Okay, good. Carrie Seigenthaler, who will be here in front a little later. Carrie. And our favorite tech team guy, Joe Malloy, on the bench. Okay, bring up the announcements. These are same as last week, actually. So coming up tomorrow, we're going to have the social at Helen's house, and she does have glass, so you don't necessarily have to bring your own glass, but an appetizer and a beverage to share would be appropriate. And it'll be a great time. I hope you can make it, especially if you're a Red Badger. You can tick off the social item on your list. Saturday, we're cleaning the beach again, 7:45, the usual place. And on the 15th, our monthly Board of Directors meeting, also at the same place, 4:30. And then we have a wine tasting committee meeting, which is always a lot of fun, on the 24th, 5:30 for that one. Next slide. Since you're eating here, you probably already know this, but just to refresh, we are at $35. Lunch. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to James Singer.
President Bob and fellow Rotarians,
Today, we would like to recognize our very first Crown Fellow at Level 4, Carol Sommer. Would you please come up, Level 4 is our highest recognition for the Crown Fellows. This award is achieved by contributing either over a period of time or all at one time $25,000 to our club's endowment fund. 4% of Carol's, or the earnings from Carol's $25,000 will bring back $1,000 to our club every single year to be used for our impact giving, and all the while preserving that principle in our donor advised fund. So this recognition is represented on the banner by 3 diamonds and is worn with the Crown Fellow pin. And not only for our endowment, but all you do for Rotary.
Well, congratulations, Art Club Award member Carol. Thank you. Okay, we're delighted to have Nina and Ryan here today, who are our latest recipients of the Jim Bernetti Scholarship Award, and Janice will introduce them.
Oh, I gotta hold this up close. Okay, good afternoon, President Bob and fellow Rotarians as well as guests. As the Youth Service Director, I want to remind you that for over 70 years, our Coronado Rotary Club has been supporting youth. One of the many ways we do this is by providing scholarships for outstanding students in many areas. But there's one very special area, and that is the Jim Bernetti Service Above Self Scholarship. This honors students who exemplify the Rotary theme of service above self. The award goes to one senior young man and one senior young woman who exemplify the ideal by personal volunteerism, active involvement in helping others, and community service. And this is while during their high school years, college, and beyond. The recipients receive $2,000 per year during their freshman and sophomore year for a total of $5,000 each. Today, I am privileged to introduce you to Nina Camisa and Ryan Kamora, who are recent Coronado High School graduates and who are the recipients of this year's scholarship. I do want to add that one of the ways they volunteer is by being very active in the Interact program there in Coronado High School, and Nina served as a president, so she's been here before. But they will tell you about their volunteer activities and their college plans. So maybe have Nina come up first, and then welcome. Congratulations, Nina.
Hi, my name is Nina Camisa. I'm not sure if you guys remember me from the Interact takeover back in May, but yes, I was a co-president of Interact. I was a part of Interact for 3 years. So in terms of service, I really loved the Rotary beach cleanups every Saturday. Getting to talk with all the Rotarians was such a great experience. And our main event was our trip to the La Hacienda Orphanage in Tijuana, which we also held a drive for, where we we collected items that they needed, such as shampoo, conditioner, toilet paper, all of that. So yes, I'm so grateful to have been a co-president this past year. So for the future, I will be attending UC Riverside, and I will be majoring in biology. As I talked about during the takeover, there is a Rotaract Club at UC Riverside, and I'm really excited to join. And yes, so the scholarship will go towards housing and food, and I'm just really grateful to have been given this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Ryan, Thank you so much for granting me the scholarship. In the future, I plan to attend UCLA as an undeclared engineering major, with hopes to use engineering to hopefully just better the world in general. For service, I went to, well, I guess the main thing was I went to India junior year and helped to volunteer at a hospital and commenced a study on how much it costs for these underserved people to actually get to the hospital, because the hospital provided free health care to everyone that needed it. So I plan to use my knowledge of engineering in the future to help better supply either medical needs or just overall help the underserved in every country possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and congratulations again. I think just about everybody in this room would trade places with you today if they could. I would. All right. Well, we're delighted to have Carrie give a Rotary Minute followed by her Who Am I, and I think that's about it then, Carrie, right? All right.
Thank you. So as our president said, it's a twofer today for me. So President Bob, fellow Rotarians and guests, thank you very much for giving me these few moments to go over a couple things. So first, I'm going to do my Rotary Minute. I'm going to try to keep it to a minute. The area that I wanted to talk about, there was a lot to choose from. And what I've chosen to speak about is Rotarian of the Year. It's something that I hadn't gotten smart enough on it, and so was really fascinated to read about it, and Tom Mitchell gave me some more information, and learned that, it's the highest honor that can be given to one of our active members by our fellow Rotarians. And it's about service above self, and not just service to our club, it's service to our community, service to a variety of things. And it's not just somebody who, well, this last year was a real go-getter. It's somebody who, over a period of time, really embodied that concept of service above self and showed themselves as a true Rotarian. You have all seen these folks. They have, I'm told, beautiful green jackets. They could be purple, but I don't know. The Rotarian committee is chaired by, and Doug, I'm very careful how I say this, not the oldest, but the most senior in his selection or her selection to the group of Rotarian of the Year. So I'm going to slaughter your name, Doug, I'm sorry. Doug Weisbarth is the current most senior member, and Jim Kaufman is our most recent Rotarian of the Year. And something I would like to challenge for Paul for the red badge requirements as I exit, and don't have to do this, but I think it would be phenomenal if somehow we had red badgers spend some time with the Rotarian of the Year, because these are people who can be our mentors and our guides. and if it could be a lunch or a coffee or something. But I think this is something that really could benefit the Red Badgers. So on to my who am I. How do you condense who you are into 2 minutes? I could go on for hours and hours and hours, but I'm going to be really brief, be funny, and be gone, as Tom tells me. So my full name is Carrie Seigenthaler. I am a California native, born and raised in Southern California. My parents were born and raised in there as well, and I'm the youngest of 4 daughters. My parents, and this might sound harsh, but my parents didn't have time to handicap me. I was the 4th child. They were busy. They had to work multiple jobs. And so I never thought that I had a disability. I just was the 4th child. And so when people were going water skiing and snow skiing and windsurfing and hiking and whatever it was, I was going. And my father's mentality, and we still say it, has always been, why not? Why not? Not, well, you're going to get hurt. Well, sure, I'm going to get hurt. Everybody gets hurt. Yeah. But it's, why not? Okay. A few words that describe me. I am the wife of a brilliant, wonderful man. I've been married 34 years. He's a retired Navy officer. I am a mom. I am an employee of AARP, where I manage a communication division, a national communication division. I've always told them it's pretty funny, you put the blind girl in charge of all the written communication. As you notice, it's less about who I am as a blind woman, because I don't let that stop me. I'm tenacious, I'm driven, I'm creative, and my husband will tell you, please, please, please do not tell Carrie she can't do that, or that she might get hurt because all you're going to do is light a flame, and she's going to go do it. And last but not the least, as of the end of this, I am finally no longer a Red Badger, and I am a Rotarian.
There you go. Very well done. Thank you. Congratulations to our newest, no longer a Red Badger. So those of you that have been on that list for a little while, here's a note. And by the way, that's a great suggestion about the Green Jackets, because we've been talking about this mentor program and how to restructure that to something that really works. I like that idea. How about any Green Jackets think that's a good one? All right. Okay. Well, here we are in August, and we have gotten through 2 of our 3 major fundraising events, and the one that's still on the horizon, which we all love so much because it involves wine, and it also involves attacking that thing that we've been working against for so long, polio. So Kit and Tim, I think, are going to give us a pitch here. If you guys... Well, I guess it's Pat and Tim, okay? Right. I knew it was one of those that ended in a T, so.
Okay, many of you know, and some of you don't, that I am a polio survivor. I had polio when I was 11, and then going over my birthday when I turned 12. And we were moving out from Texas to California, my sister Marilyn, myself, and my mother, while our father was on a hospital ship. He was a medical doctor on a hospital ship during the Korean War. So we came out to California, and we first went to Los Angeles when my mother realized that I couldn't even open my eyes. I couldn't see any light, but we didn't know what it was. And then I got a very stiff neck, and Mother recognized that as a sign of infantile paralysis, polio, which our Coronado chapter has done such an amazing job to combat. But anyway, so they popped me into the isolation ward at LA General Hospital, and there I remained over Christmas, over my birthday, and I was there for about a month, and then moved to Kaiser Rehabilitation Institute in Santa Monica, where all the physical therapy started. And as you can see, I'm one of the lucky ones. I didn't have any after effects from polio. I have not contracted post-polio syndrome. I'm just very, very lucky. But anyway, when we, when I was at Kaiser, they had a big swimming pool. One funny thing that happened to me when I was in the swimming pool, which I was in there every day, there was an earthquake, and the water in the swimming pool was just going, and I'm thinking, what in the world? I was new to California. So anyway, that was just an aside. But when I was in LA General, backtracking a bit, you know, there were children there that were in the hallways in iron lungs, so many of them so much worse off than myself. And it was just heartbreaking. And I was interviewed to be March of Dimes poster girl, but they decided I wasn't badly enough off to, you know, to inspire anybody to give. So anyway, and then the thing that I wanted to really emphasize is how important it is for us to be as generous as we can possibly be through the wine tasting, through any of the giving that we do to eradicate polio. All of our money, I know you've heard this 100 times, all of our money is matched 2-to-1 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So everything you give is matched 2-to-1. So thank you. That's really all I'm going to say, and we just have to lick this thing. Okay?
It's hard to follow a personal testimonial about polio, but I'm going to do my best. Thanks, Pat. That sells itself. So, key date, September 8th, right? Everybody knows this is when EPN and Polio Now is going to happen. I'm going to put on my doctor hat just for a quick minute here and just kind of remind you how important this is, in addition to the testimonial we just heard. So, we all know this, that polio affects the most vulnerable population in the world, the kids under 5. This is even today, when Pat had it, and it's true today, kids under 5 are our most vulnerable patient population. Since 1988, I was interested to read actually on our Rotary International website and Polio Now website, we have reduced polio by 99.9%, which is an amazing thing. And that's because of the generosity and the donations that have come out of groups like this, like Coronado's Rotary and Rotary International. Unfortunately, because of the effects of the pandemic, there's been a little bit of a step back. So even though there's still only 2 countries that are endemic with polio is creeping its way back into our country and other Western countries and countries around the world. So we actually, this time last year, had a case of polio that arrived in New York City, and that should get your attention. So now is the time to become ever more generous with your donations, which you can do even today. You don't have to wait till September 8th to help end polio and to provide vaccinations for our young ones. There are only 2 countries left that have endemic polio. We'd love to snuff this out like we did with smallpox. It's going to take a huge effort. So what I would like to do now is take off my doctor hat and put on my auction subcommittee hat. So we have only a few more days left before I need to get these forms to Doug St. Dennis. And so I know people have already been so generous with their time and money. It's amazing what we've gotten even over the past couple of weeks. Just got a donation right before the meeting today. But if you've made a verbal donation, I still need the form so that we can actually get it auction ready. And if you haven't decided what to give and you just thought about it just now, come find me. We can still get stuff into the silent auction and maximize our opportunity to end polio now. That's all I have to say. Thanks, President Bob.
Thank you, Tim. And we will beat this disease, and we will be prominent in its dilemmas. How many surfers do we have in here? I mean, but they can really, okay, well, all right, well, we're pleased to have Jim Kempton, the CEO, and Christine will make the introduction.
You do not have to be a surfer to enjoy this presentation. I have known Jim for a while. He is the president for 10 years of the Surfing Museum in Oceanside. If you have not been, it's an amazing museum. And I am so privileged to have him as a museum colleague. It is my pleasure today to introduce Jim. He's a well-known pioneer in the surf and action sports industry, an author, editor, media marketing authority, and a historian like myself. Over his career, he has been an editor, publisher, and more recently, the media director of Billabong, surfing's top lifestyle brand. And I know him as the president of the California Surfing Museum. Awarded the California Arts Award for Excellence in Editorial Writing, Jim Kempton has written hundreds of articles on surfing, including the History of the Surfing Industry Manufacturers Association. He also wrote Surfing the Manual, a book on the history of surfing, and edited the San Onofre Surfing Club, a book on the history of surfing in San Onofre. His latest book is close to my heart, and we carry it at the Historical Association, Women on Waves, a history of women's surfing. Jim holds an MBA in international business and a BA in journalism. He has surfed and or lived in over 30 countries, being born in Guam and learning to surf in the South Pacific and Southeast Asia. He currently comes from San Clemente, where he lives with his wife and 3 children. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you so much. That was really nice. I feel a little underwhelmed here about what we've been doing for all these good works that the Rotary Club does. I belong to the Rotary Club in San Clemente, so I know all the good work that you do, and it's appreciated around the world. I've been to many places where people have literally mentioned the Rotary Club as something that has been a major force for them in other countries. So kudos to all of you, and I'm happy to be here today. My talk is going to be about surfing in San Diego, because if you're going to talk about surfing to a group of people who live in Coronado, you want to make it something that's relatable. And surfing in San Diego has a very, very rich heritage. He asked how many people surf, but how many of you have watched surfing in San Diego? So one of the questions I get asked frequently when I talk about San Diego is, why is San Diego such a great place for surfing? And there are a number of reasons for it, but in San Diego County, and that's going all the way up to the Trestles area on the other side of Pendleton, we have waves that are every type that there is. Cobblestone reefs, we have river mouths, we have beach breaks, we have point breaks. We literally have waves of all sorts in San Diego, and part of the reason why we have such good surf is that a very unique thing about San Diego is most of the coastline in California is pretty straight. You can drive for miles and it's just facing west. In San Diego, we actually have waves that break that on beaches that face east or east-southeast, north, west, and south. Waves of every type that come from, generated from out in the Pacific, thousands of miles away, to local Mexican chubascos that come up the coast from mainland Mexico. So it's really a place where surfing in California was one of the seminal places that surfing began to develop the sort of California style that it's known for today. So it's such a huge topic. I decided that what I would do is just briefly talk about the firsts that San Diego has as a surf community. And the first thing is that it was the first surfboard made in California. And this is by a gentleman This was by a gentleman named Ralph Noisette, and he was a captain in the Navy, and he went over to Hawaii and saw surfing, and he didn't realize that boards could be made by other kinds of wood, so he ordered Hawaiian pine to be shipped back to the United States and then shaped a board for himself. And that was we have it in the museum, the first surfboard made in California in 1903. Then we had a very famous visitor that came to the United States to popularize surfing, and his name was George Freeth. And George Freeth gave surfing demonstrations here in San Diego for the local real estate people to build the idea of attractive homes at the beach, another first for us. And of course, you all know Duke Kahanamoku. Duke won many medals in 4 different Olympics and is considered the father of modern surfing. Went on the road around the world to introduce it to other surfers. But when he came here, he left a surfboard, and a gentleman who lived in Oceanside, Charlie Wright, and his girlfriend Faye Baird, both who were avid swimmers, started using the surfboard. They gave demonstrations all over San Diego back in the 1920s. They gave one in Mission Beach on a December 31st, New Year's Eve, where they had a crowd of almost 10,000 people come and watch them, and they lit the ocean so people could see it by torchlights. They had to paddle out, light their torches, and then ride in holding these torches. So another first in San Diego. You can so there's a picture of George Freeth, sorry, and then you'll see the picture of Charlie and Faye. That's the next one. The next one will come up there. There they are with their board. That's a Duke Kahanamoku board that he brought over from Hawaii. Woody Brown, who was a really famous surfer here in the 1930s, was one of the first people to popularize wind and sea and the La Jolla area for surfing. And he died just recently. He lived to be 96 and was a huge patron of the museum and of surfing in general. And we're really blessed to have had him all these years and have him pass down all the information that he did. We have another person, and this is close to you guys, and I put it in purposely for this, but the gentleman, Dempsey Holder, that he discovered the Tijuana Sloughs. Now, I know that no one surfs there anymore now, but back in the 30s, it had huge waves that would come in there. It was one of the only big wave spots that people knew in California, and he discovered it and was the first person to sort of surf what we would call big waves, that is, waves over 10 or 15 feet in California. And then we have Bob Simmons. Bob Simmons was a gentleman who we kind of call the Da Vinci of surfing. He invented so many different things. He invented fins, he invented leashes, he worked at the aeronautics plant during the war, during World War II. He worked at the aeronautics plant and discovered that aerodynamics, which is what they were building airplanes, and hydrodynamics actually had exactly the same principles. So he took that after the war and implemented them into the shape of what surfboards would be, and it kind of revolutionized surfboards, because before that they'd just been these sort of big logs that people carved down to this. They were flat enough on front and back, or bottom and top, to stand up. So again, a first in San Diego was a gentleman who's probably one of the most influential shapers ever in the history of surfing. The very first historian in California was a gentleman, some of you may be familiar with. His name was John Elwell. And John was a fabulous historian. He kept lots of records, passed lots of things down, and so you see a picture of him there with his board and his car. He would actually, in those days, be able to drive on the beach and just park wherever he wanted to and go out and surf. So, an interesting gentleman. The next person that I want to just draw your attention to, and I think you all may know him, but his name is Phil Edwards, and he was at one time considered the greatest surfer in the world. And the proof of that is you can see that picture of him on the right there, of him doing a bottom turn. This is way back in the early 1950s, and just a couple of years ago, they put a statue of him in a park to honor the fact that he was such a prominent and influential surfer. Again, he was from Oceanside, a San Diego native. One more, Pat Curran. Pat was one of the very first 5 people who paddled out at Waimea Bay. Again, I'm just going to be hopeful that you guys know these places, but Waimea Bay was the first big wave spot that they sort of conquered in Hawaii. And it had always been considered unrideable, too big to ride, and that it had sort of Hawaiian spirits to it. So one day, these 5 guys paddled out, and he was one of them. The net result of his lifetime of surfing was his son, Tommy Curran, was a 3-time world champion of the world. So he did well for himself. Now the next person I want to talk about is Linda Benson, and Linda has a pretty great story to tell. She went to Hawaii when she was 15. She won the Makaha Championships, which then was sort of the world champion, the world title. And then she went to Waimea Bay to watch the men surf. And a couple of the photographers, John Severson from Surfer Magazine as being one of them, said, hey, if you paddle out at Waimea, we'll shoot you. We'll film you. So she borrowed a board. So think about this. On a borrowed board, a 15-year-old girl paddled out at Waimea Bay on one of the biggest days and rode waves there back in 1957. So that's Linda. She's still alive. She's spry as can be, and a wonderful lady in her 90s. Now, the next person that I want to show is Mike Hinson. You all know the Endless Summer, the movie The Endless Summer, and you wouldn't guess, but the director of that film was not from San Diego, but the star, Mike Hinson, was. He grew up here and lives in La Jolla to this day, and has been a famous surf star since 1965. The next one here. Now, I put this in purposely. I know this a little bit blurry, but I put it in because this was one of the great surfers of the 60s, and he is from Coronado. And his name is John Peck, and he was one of the first people to ever surf pipeline on the North Shore of Oahu. And you can see him there grabbing the rail of his surfboard. At that time, that was no one had even thought to do that, but the wave was so steep, he had to squat like that and grab the rail for balance to keep his board from just going up and flipping over. So I just thought I'd bring him because he was a great Coronado surfer and one of the greats in the 1960s. One of the places that really started the surfing culture was a place called Windansea, and Windansea spawned many really legendary surfers. They were the first ones to have a club that was of really importance. There were clubs that were there before them, but they were the ones that had all the great surfers, and people would actually join the club that didn't even live in San Diego because it was such a prestigious club to belong to. And so it is still going. They just celebrated their 60th anniversary, and they call it 6-0 instead of 5-0 from Hawaii. And it was great to see all of those legendary figures come and enjoy themselves there. In the mid sort of 60s, surfing really took off as a boom. It moved from being a sport where there was wooden boards, and one of the things that Bob Simmons, who I mentioned earlier, did was recognize that balsa wood was a lot lighter than the big redwood and koa boards that they had been using for several centuries. And so he wanted to get balsa. Luckily enough, the aerospace industry where he was working was using balsa for the wings of the bomber planes so they could carry more payload. They were making the wings out of balsa, which was much lighter than the steel using. And when the war ended and no one knew when it was going to end exactly, the United States found itself with warehouses full of balsa. So immediately Bob Simmons went down and bought all the balls that he could find and started shaping it. But one of the things he also did was usher in the era of foam and fiberglass. And that revolutionized surfing because it could be then mass produced. And by that time, there was a huge demand for surfing and for surfboards, but there wasn't an ability to supply it because carving a board out of wood is not something you can produce 100 of a day. So one of the people that took advantage of that and is also from San Diego is Bush Van Arsdale. He just had a book published a couple of years ago. He's going to be one of the honorees at the gala that we put on every year at the California Surf Museum. And he was one of the very first people, along with John Peck from Coronado, to conquer pipeline. He was the first gentleman who was given the name Mr. Pipeline, which is sort of like, I don't know what it would be like in baseball. It would be like Babe Ruth. You know, it was just something that a record that will never be broken because they were the first. In the 1960s, as I was saying, there was this huge demand for surfboards, and San Diego became a huge hub for surfing. It had Hansen surfboards, Surfboards Hawaii, Channing Diffenderfer, Challenger, Bain, Del Cannon, Encinitas surfboards, Carl Ekstrom, and the list was just huge. And one of the people that came was Larry Gordon. Again, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Larry Gordon, but Gordon & Smith is still the most prominent surfboard manufacturer in San Diego. And he was a gentleman who, I don't think there's a shaper living today in San Diego that wasn't influenced or at least didn't work for him in San Diego. He was just sort of like the farm club, so to speak. Every single shaper who's come has always worked at Larry Gordon's. He died several years ago as well, but was a huge, huge influence not only on San Diego surfing, but on shaping around the world. So he had two riders that were very prominent. One of them was Skip Fry, and Skip was, you can see him skateboarding there, and you can also see him surfing there, but he was considered one of the ultimate stylists of the 1960s, a gentleman who just had so much grace, and they likened him to Rudolf Nurio during that era because he was like a dancer that could just look so elegant and beautiful on a wave or on a skateboard. But in 1966, we had a very unique thing, again, the first, and it was the first world contest ever held in California or in the United States in general, right here in San Diego, and it was incredibly influential. It actually changed the world of surfing because it was the first time that shortboards had ever been used. And the gentleman who was riding one of those new boards won the contest, won the world title. He was from Australia. But what it did was legitimize the idea that shortboards could be a new form of surfing. And that from then on, longboards fell away and shortboards came back. In fact, there's a funny story. I worked for Surfboards Hawaii, which was in Encinitas. It was right at the La Paloma Theater, where the restaurant is now on the south side of the La Paloma Theater, was the Surfboards Hawaii factory. And I worked in it as a young guy, glassing and hot coating the surfboards. And it's a wonder, we laugh today about this, but we would get so dizzy when we were carrying the boards from one room to another with all the resin, because it was a huge high ceiling like this with only windows at the top. We'd get so dizzy we'd have to go outside behind the railroad tracks and throw up and come back in. I don't think OSHA would have liked that too much, but it was before its time. It had a huge influence on San Diego and on the way that surfers looked at the possibilities of surfing from that time on. One of the people who won that contest was a woman named Joyce Hoffman, and you can see her again here. That was an ad that she got from the Triumph company. They gave her a car, and she modeled in it, and she won the contest in 1966. She won 3 world titles. One of the greats of surfing, again, a San Diego person. She also was the very first woman lifeguard in San Diego. She lifeguarded for the Del Mar Lifeguard Association in 1972, going back 50, however many years that is now, but certainly 5 decades. There's another gentleman we can switch to, Mike Doyle, and he's called the Iron Man. And you can see that wave and get an idea of why they called him that. But he would enter triathlons where he would surf and run and bicycle, all the Ironman type stuff in the early days and win everything. He was just an amazing character. And he had a protege that was named Margot Godfrey, and then Margot Oberg. And Margot was 13 when he took her under his wing. And just to give you an idea, when I say things like she's one of the greatest surfers in the world, Margot Godfrey, and think about this for a second in your own high school living, she had won every single major contest in the United States and the world. She had won a world title. She had won the surfer pole. She had ridden the biggest wave that a woman had ever surfed, all before she graduated from high school. So she was a wonderkind, no doubt about it. And when I talk about the shapers, Carl Ekstrom, again, someone that you may or may not know, he's from La Jolla. He was very instrumental in developing new ideas about surfing and surfboards. He had a board called the asymmetrical, which was the side that you surfed into the wave on, was shaped differently from the other side of the board to accommodate whatever kind of wave you were riding, and designed from that. Very, very influential gentleman. Again, a first. No one had ever done that. Surf photography is also a key thing. This is Jeff Devine. Jeff was from La Jolla. He is probably at least one of the top 3, if not the greatest surf photographer of all time. That picture you see there kind of explains why. Jeff had an incredible eye for just being there at the right time, and getting shots that no one else has ever been able to replicate. And I say that because you can see the dog there in the foreground with the surfer, and a perfect way of breaking it pipeline. Then as we moved into the 70s, we had a very big innovation in surfing, and it was a twin fin, 2 fins instead of 1. And the only other person who had ever done that was back in the 1920s and 30s was Bob Simmons, who I told you about. He had board with 2 fins, but it never caught on, and no one used them, and everyone used a single fin. This gentleman right here, Steve Liss, designed one first for kneeboard riding, and then they realized they could stand up on these things, and you can imagine it was like someone riding on a frisbee now. It just skated across the water, and people were amazed. I was going to school at what was in Cal Western, now it's the Church of the Nazarene College on Point Loma, which is a huge wave field, one of the best in San Diego. All reefs along that side of Point Loma. You got the other side of what you guys look at here. But he invented what was called the fish, and to this day it's one of the probably 2 or 3 types of surfing vehicles that people ride. Again, a San Diego native. This was just to say there were a lot of women that don't get credit, and one of them, if we can just change to the next slide here. Oh no, out of sync. Sorry. In the 1970s, one of the things that happened is all these board innovations happened, but the idea of contest surfing became very unpopular. It was we always say that the 60s actually happened in the 70s, right? It was thought of in the 60s, but most of it actually happened in the 70s. And one of the things was that everything was boards were short, hair was long, pot was the thing that people smoked, and surfing was really kind of in that whole genre of the change that happened in the United States at that time, the Vietnam War, so much that was going on. But the women were very, very influential with that. One of them, Barbie Barron, had the first surf shop. We're going to see a picture of her surf shop here in a minute. You can just click a couple of those down. This is a picture. This is a picture of what it was like in the '60s, and then in the '70s you couldn't find anyone on the beach like that. So Barbie's picture is coming up here in the next slide. And there you see it. She was the very first woman to own a surf shop. She's a Carlsbad resident. She raised two great kids who also were prominent surfers, but another first for San Diego. In all the world, the hundreds and hundreds of surf shops, she was the very first one that was a woman's surf shop, and a great lady. And then we come to the Maury Boogie. Again, a San Diego native who, by the name of Tom Maury. Again, a brilliant man. He went to Caltech. He was an engineer, but he loved surfing, and he wanted to be able to introduce the idea of wave riding to the whole world. And he thought the only way that he could do that, because not everyone was going to be able to have a surfboard, but they could have a boogie board. And he knew that pie-pow boards, which were what they called the boards that you rode on your belly or on your knees on, were very popular, but again, they were wooden. They were hard to get a hold of. So he came up with the concept of making it out of these new products of foam and plastic. And he created that. The very first one he did with newspaper. He just layered newspaper and kept sticking them together until he built a board about 3 inches thick and tried it out. And then he began to explore what kinds of materials would work for this. And I'm sure probably all of you at some point or another have ridden a boogie board. Just been on it, grabbed it, rode in on it, and his whole idea was to give the world this gift of wave riding. That maybe you couldn't stand up, and maybe you couldn't surf Waimea, or maybe you couldn't enter a contest, but every single person in the world, he wanted to be able to have that feeling of what a surfboard or a wave riding vehicle could be. And by the way, I just want to mention something that's not a first, or maybe it is. It's my theory, and I'm sticking with it. But one of the reasons that I think that surfing is different in its experience from other sports is the fact that, if you think about it, all energy in the universe moves in waves. Light waves, heat waves, sound waves, electrical waves, X-rays. Right now, as we're sitting here, there are thousands of waves rolling through our bodies right now. We don't even know they're there, but everything you hear, every pin drop, this microphone, that's all a wave coming out to you as it is. And when people walk into the room and say, gee, I really got bad vibes. I mean, I think that's when people are giving that out, and you can sometimes feel it. But I think the reason that surfing is so unique is you have what we call gravity sports. You can drop off of a ledge, or you can ride down a slope on a ski or a snowboard. But the only place in the known universe that you can actually feel the energy of a wave is in the ocean when you're standing and riding, or when you're riding a wave. And I think when surfers come out of the water, people always say, gosh, they sound so inarticulate, they can't even describe, they sound like idiots. But that experience, whether you want to call it cosmic or not, is something that is a cosmic experience that is very difficult to explain to other people. And that's why we have these words like stoked, which just means like when someone puts the billows in the fire, it just lights up. And that's what people feel like when they've had a really great ride on a wave. I encourage you all to try it, see if this is true. So let's see. We have we also did. You can go to the next slide. Here with Donald Takayama. Now I don't know again how many of you are familiar with Donald Takayama, but if you were to ask 1,000 surfers in San Diego, not one of them would say I don't know him, and not one of them would say he influenced my life in some way or another. He had hundreds and hundreds of acolytes. He was like a grandfather to so many of these surfers, myself included. In fact, I wrote a book on cooking, and one of the things that I always had wondered is how did Donald, he would have these barbecues where he'd have 200 people come and eat. And I always think, how does he do that? And then I saw that what he'd done is he wrapped all the fish or the meat in foil. And I know that's a really simple thing now, but this is 50 years ago. And Donald had figured that out from the Hawaiians who would wrap it with seaweed or banana leaves and then put it into the fire. And you can't overcook it, right? It just steams. So it comes out perfect every time, and you can throw 100 of them on the grill, and they all come out. So one of the recipes in that cookbook that I have is Donald's. But that's what I mean when I say everyone was influenced in some way or another by that gentleman. So again, some of the first. This is Joey Baran. He's from Carlsbad. He's now a minister in North County. But he was the very first Californian and the very first San Diego to win the Pipeline Masters, which is sort of like, I don't know, the Augusta or the French Open. It's something that if you win it, you're sort of famous for life, having won that contest, because it's the most difficult one in the world. And this person here, Debbie Beecham. Debbie was a world champion in 1986, and she went on to become the first woman pro surfing director. So as pro surfing became prominent, the women asked for a voice, and Debbie was the first person they picked to do that. Now, we all know how difficult it is for women to deal in a man's world, but just let me tell you a little something about Debbie to make you understand that. When she was competing in Hawaii, she paddled out one day about an hour before her heat, and she took a bad wipe out, and her board hit her and broke her ribs. She was determined that she was not going to miss this. She went to a doctor who was a surfer as well. He taped her up. She paddled back out at 10-foot sunset and took off on a wave, and her second wave, she broke her board and had to swim in. She was going up the beach to get another board to go back out, and they called the contest. But that's the kind of person Debbie was. So she didn't have any trouble standing up to the guys when it came to getting the women the equal time in the water or the equal attention. We can go to the next slide. So Fernando Aguirre, originally an Argentinian but has lived in San Diego most of his life now, was the person who took surfing to the Olympics. Right here from San Diego, he lobbied for 17 years for surfing to be admitted into the Olympics, and finally, they got it. We'll just skip a couple of these and just go to the next slide here. This is Brad Gerlach. He won the largest wave ever ridden. Again, a San Diego surfer. Joel Tudor, coming up here next. One of the great wave riders in the world. Keep going. We'll run through these. And this is Corey. This is Corey Schumacher. She's a two-time world champion longboarder. Fabulous girl. She went after her surfing career and got a degree from UCLA, which I know some of you are going to now, and got a degree and came back to become the mayor of Carlsbad for a while. And then there's Joel again. You can see him penning tin. And then Jim Smith, the last one here, is a three-time world champion longboarder as well. So San Diego, I hope I'm getting a point, is one of the most important places that there is for surfing. It's had that many firsts, and I think you all should be really, really proud of the surfers and the surfing that has come out of this region. So, thank you.
I think we've got time for one question, because that was a great presentation, Jim. And there's one, Dan Orr, who usually is on a bike, but he's thinking about getting on a surfboard.
You worked at Surfer Magazine, right?
Yes.
Who was the guy that drew the Murph the Surf cartoon?
So that was a guy named Rick Griffin, and he lived in San Diego for a while. He was not a native of San Diego and lived in many other places, but he also went on to do illustrations for all of the bands in San Francisco, when you see those posters of Jimi Hendrix or the Allman Brothers or Santana or all those bands, hundreds of bands, he did most of those posters are Rick Griffin posters. And he invented Murphy when he was sort of scribbling in his notebook in high school.
Don't go away quite yet, Jay. First of all, thank you for that really fascinating bit of Southern California history. And I mean, surfing is it, right? It really is. And I'd like to make you the first recipient of our newly minted challenge coins. So, thank you so much. Great show. Thank you, Jim, and congratulations to Ryan and Nina. And we're off today, and we're back on at the Dell with District Governor Don Phipps next week. Have a great Rotary week.